The galaxy had forgotten about humans. 3,000 years was a long time. Empires rose and fell. Stars were born and died. And the small blue planet called Earth became nothing more than a ghost story that parents told their children. Long ago, they would say, there was a dangerous species. They were violent and unpredictable. The wise Galactic Council had to remove them for the safety of all. The children would shiver and ask, "Are they really gone?" Yes, the parents would answer, "They are gone forever." But they were wrong. Admiral Ho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Memory, the flagship of the human fleet. He was an old man now, with gray hair and deep lines on his face, but his eyes were sharp and full of purpose. He had waited his entire life for this moment. His father had waited. His grandfather had waited. 7 generations of his family had lived and died in the darkness between stars, all waiting for this day. "Admiral," said Commander, stepping up beside him. She was young, barely 40 years old, but she had proven herself in countless missions. "All ships report ready. The fleet is in position." Ho nodded slowly. He looked at the main screen, which showed the blackness of space. Soon, that blackness would give way to the light of the Galactic Council's central system. Soon, the galaxy would learn the truth. "How many ships do we have?" Ho asked, though he already knew the answer. 12,000 warships, replied, 40,000 support vessels, and the Ark ships carrying our civilian population. Ho closed his eyes for a moment. 12,000 warships. It seemed like a lot, but the Galactic Council had millions of ships spread across their territory. In a straight fight, humanity would lose. But they were not planning a straight fight. "Begin the jump," Ho ordered. The Eternal Memory shook as its engines powered up. Around them, thousands of other ships did the same. The jump drives, technology that humanity had developed in secret over 3,000 years, could move them across the galaxy in seconds. The Council had nothing like it. Space twisted and bent. Stars blurred into lines of light, and then suddenly they were there. The hung in space before them, a massive planet covered in silver cities. Orbital stations circled it like rings around a giant. Defense platforms bristled with weapons. And beyond the planet, Ho could see the ships of the fleet, hundreds of them, scrambling to respond to the sudden appearance of unknown vessels. "Admiral," said the communications officer, a young man named One, "we are receiving transmissions from the... They are demanding to know who we are." Ho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Open a channel, let me speak to them." The main screen flickered, and then the face of it appeared. There were tall beings with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were large and black, and they had no hair on their smooth heads. This particular wore the uniform of a military commander, with medals and ribbons covering his chest. "Unknown vessels," they said, his voice cold and arrogant. "You have entered space without permission. Identify yourselves immediately or be destroyed." Ho stepped forward so the camera could see him clearly. He wanted them to see his face. He wanted them to see what a human looked like. "My name is Admiral Ho," he said. "I am the commander of the human fleet." The black eyes went wide. His 4 arms twitched nervously. "That is impossible. Humans are extinct. They have been extinct for 3,000 years. "You tried to make us extinct," Ho replied. "You failed." On the bridge of the Eternal Memory, every officer watched in silence. They had all heard the stories. They all knew what they had done. They had been the ones who proposed the destruction of Earth. They had been the ones who led the attack. They had been the ones who celebrated when the last human colony was burned. Or so they thought. "This is a trick," the commander said. "Some kind of deception. Humans do not have the technology for ships like these." "We had 3,000 years to develop it," Ho said. 3,000 years of hiding in the dark spaces between stars. 3,000 years of planning. 3,000 years of remembering. He paused, letting his words sink in. "We remember everything," Ho continued. We remember the day your ships appeared in our sky. We remember the bombs that fell on our cities. We remember the screams of our children. We remember the taste of ash in the air. We remember, and we have come back." The commander's face had gone pale. His 4 hands were shaking. "What do you want?" Ho looked at him for a long moment. Then he spoke a single word. "Justice." The transmission ended. The commander's face disappeared from the screen, replaced by the view of the planet below. "Admiral," said quietly, "the fleet is powering up their weapons. They are preparing to attack." Ho nodded. He had expected this. They had always been aggressive. They would not surrender without a fight. "Activate the shadow field," he ordered. The eternal memory hummed as the shadow field came online. This was humanity's greatest weapon, developed in secret over centuries. The shadow field could disable any electronic system within its range. Weapons, engines, life support, everything would simply stop working. On the screen, Ho watched as the ships went dark. One by one, their lights flickered and died. Their weapons powered down. Their engines fell silent. In seconds, the entire fleet was drifting helplessly in space. "The orbital defense platforms are also disabled," one reported, "and we are detecting power failures across the planet's surface. Their entire power grid has collapsed." Ho felt no satisfaction. He had hoped they would surrender peacefully. He had hoped they would understand that resistance was pointless. But they had chosen to fight, just as they had chosen to fight 3,000 years ago. "Send medical ships to the disabled vessels," Ho ordered. "Make sure their life support is restored. I do not want anyone to die today." Looked at him with surprise. "Admiral, after what they did to us." "We are not them," Ho said firmly. "We did not survive for 3,000 years just to become monsters. We came here for justice, not revenge." Nodded slowly. "Yes, Admiral." The next few hours were busy. Human ships moved through the disabled fleet, restoring power to life support systems and ensuring that no one suffocated in the darkness. The crews were confused and afraid, but they were treated with respect. Meanwhile, Ho prepared his next message. This one would not be for the alone. This one would be for the entire galaxy. "Recording ready," one announced. Ho stood straight and looked into the camera. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. He wanted the galaxy to see that humans were organized, disciplined, and calm. He wanted them to understand that humanity was not a group of angry survivors seeking blind destruction. "To all members of the Galactic Council," Ho began. "My name is Admiral Ho, and I speak for humanity. 3,000 years ago, your ancestors made a decision. They decided that humans were too dangerous to live. They sent their fleets to our home and destroyed our world. They hunted us across the stars and tried to wipe us from existence." He paused, letting his words echo across the galaxy. "They failed," he continued. "A small group of humans escaped. They hid in the spaces between stars where no one would look for them. They built new ships, new homes, and new lives, and they never forgot what was done to them." Ho's voice grew harder. "We have returned, not to destroy but to demand answers. Why did you decide to kill us? Who gave the order? Who voted for our extinction? We want the truth and we want justice. Those responsible will be held accountable." He took a deep breath. "We do not seek war. We do not seek the destruction of your worlds. We are better than that, but we will not be ignored. We will not be forgotten. And we will not stop until justice is served." The recording ended. One sent it out on every channel, every frequency, across the entire galaxy. "It is done," Ho said quietly. He turned to look out the window at the below. The cities were dark without power, but he knew the people inside were alive and safe. "What happens now?" asked. "Now we wait," Ho replied. "We wait for the council to respond. We wait to see if they will give us justice or if they will force us to take it." Nodded. She had been born on one of the Ark ships, raised on stories of Earth and the Great Betrayal. She had trained her whole life for this moment, just like every other human in the fleet. "Do you think they will surrender?" she asked. Ho thought about it for a long moment. The Galactic Council was made up of 12 species, each with their own interests and agendas. Some had been enthusiastic supporters of Earth's destruction. Others had simply gone along with the majority. A few had even voted against it, though their objections had been ignored. "Some will," Ho said finally. "Some will not. But in the end, they will all have to face the truth. They will all have to answer for what they did." He turned away from the window and walked toward his quarters. He was tired, more tired than he had ever been in his life. But he could not rest yet. There was still so much to do. "Wake me if anything changes," he told, "and send a message to the Ark ships. Tell them that the first step is complete. Tell them that we are home." Saluted, "Yes, Admiral." As Ho walked through the corridors of the eternal memory, he passed by walls covered with names. Thousands of names, millions of names, all written in small letters. These were the names of the dead, the humans who had died when Earth was destroyed. Every ship in the fleet had walls like this, a reminder of why they were here. Ho stopped in front of one section of the wall. He reached out and touched a single name. Park, his ancestor, 7 generations back. She had been a teacher on Earth, a woman who loved children and books and music. She had died when the bombs fell, along with her students and her family. "We are here," Ho whispered. "We came back just like we promised." The wall was cold under his fingers. The names were silent, but Ho felt somehow that they could hear him, that they knew. He wiped his eyes and continued walking. There was still much work to do, and the night was far from over. But for the first time in 3,000 years, humanity had hope. They had returned, and the galaxy would never forget them again. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Humans had returned. The species that everyone thought was dead had come back with a fleet of impossible ships and technology that no one understood, that was under their control, and the mighty military was helpless. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, there was panic. "This is impossible," shouted Hai, slamming his 4 fists on the table. He was proud and arrogant, just like his ancestors who had led the attack on Earth. "Humans cannot have survived. We destroyed every ship, every colony, every hiding place." "Clearly you missed one," said Miravda. "There were small, furry beings with quick minds and even quicker tongues." Mir looked almost amused by the situation. "Or perhaps more than one." "This is not a joke," roared. "They have disabled our entire fleet. They have shut down our planet's power. My people are sitting in the dark, waiting to see if these humans will kill them." "Have they killed anyone?" asked Avda. They were tall and thin, with skin like polished wood and eyes that glowed soft green. They were known for their calm and thoughtful nature. Hesitated. "No, not yet. They have been careful. They restored life support to our ships. They sent medical teams to help the injured." "Strange behavior for a species seeking revenge," observed. "They are playing games with us," insisted. "They want us to lower our guard before they strike." But not everyone agreed. Around the table sat representatives from all 12 species of the Galactic Council. Some looked worried, some looked angry, and some, like Mir, looked thoughtful. "Perhaps," said Sung Ho we should listen to what they want." Everyone turned to look at him. They were a relatively new species in the Council, having joined only 500 years ago. They were humanoid in appearance, with pale skin and dark hair, and some said they looked similar to the extinct humans. Sung Ho was young for barely 200 years old, but he was known for his wisdom. "Listen to them," sputtered. "They are invaders, terrorists. We should gather our fleets and destroy them." "With what?" Sung Ho asked calmly. "You saw what happened to your fleet. Your ships are useless against their technology. If we attack, we will lose." "Then what do you suggest?" demanded. "I suggest we find out what they want," Sung Ho replied. Their admiral said they seek justice, not destruction. Perhaps we should hear them out. The argument continued for hours. In the end, the council decided to send a delegation to meet with the humans. They would ask questions, gather information, and try to understand what the humans wanted. But not everyone was willing to wait. Far from the council chambers, in the shadows of the great capital city, Commander was already at work. She had come alone, slipping away from the fleet in a small shuttle that could avoid detection. Her mission was simple but dangerous. She needed to find the Council's archives, the secret records that contained the truth about Earth's destruction. For 3,000 years, the official story had been that humans were a dangerous species that threatened galactic peace. The Council had claimed that the destruction of Earth was necessary, a difficult but unavoidable decision made for the greater good. But knew that was a lie. The humans who escaped had carried their own records, their own evidence. They knew that the decision to destroy Earth had been made not out of fear but out of greed. The Council had wanted human territory. They had wanted human resources, and they had invented an excuse to take them. Now needed to find the Council's own records, the documents that proved what really happened. She needed evidence that even the Council could not deny. The archives were located deep beneath the capital city, in a vault that was supposed to be impenetrable. Smiled as she looked at the massive door that blocked her path. The Council thought their security was perfect. They had no idea what human technology could do. She pressed a small device against the door. It hummed softly, and the door's locking mechanism clicked open. 3,000 years of development had given humanity tools that the galaxy could not imagine. Where the Council used brute force and heavy encryption, humans used elegant solutions that slipped through defenses like water through sand. The archives were vast, filled with millions of records from thousands of years of galactic history. Moved quickly through the rows of data storage units, her scanner searching for specific keywords. Earth, humans, extinction, genocide. "Come on," she whispered. "Where are you hiding?" Finally, her scanner beeped. She had found it. A sealed section of the archives, locked with the highest level of security. The section was labeled Historical Corrections. Knew that was a polite way of saying things we want to forget. She broke through the security in minutes. The files spilled across her screen and felt her heart grow cold as she read them. The truth was worse than she had imagined. The decision to destroy Earth had been made in secret by a small group of who wanted to expand their territory. They had created fake reports about human aggression, manufactured evidence of human attacks on peaceful species, and spread propaganda about the human threat throughout the galaxy. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the vote. Found the record of the Council meeting where the final decision was made. 12 species had voted. 9 had voted yes, agreeing to destroy Earth and kill every human in the galaxy. 3 had voted no, arguing that genocide was wrong no matter the reason. The 3 species who voted no had been punished. Their economies had been sanctioned. Their representatives had been removed from the Council. They had been silenced for trying to save humanity. And the 9 species who voted yes had celebrated. Found records of parties, of celebrations, of medals given to the officers who led the attack on Earth. They had treated the murder of billions as a victory, something to be proud of. Saved everything. Every file, every record, every piece of evidence. She would bring it back to Admiral Ho, and then the galaxy would see the truth. As she prepared to leave, her communicator buzzed. It was a message from the fleet. "Commander," said one's voice, "the Council has sent a delegation to meet with the Admiral. They want to negotiate." Smiled grimly. "Tell the Admiral I have what we need, the truth about Earth's destruction, all of it." Understood. Return to the fleet as soon as possible. Made her way back through the archives, careful to leave no trace of her visit. The Council would eventually discover that their secrets had been stolen, but by then it would be too late. Meanwhile, aboard the Eternal Memory, Admiral Ho prepared to meet the Council's delegation. They arrived in a shuttle covered with diplomatic flags, clearly hoping that symbols of peace would protect them. Ho watched as they landed in the flagship's hangar bay, then walked down to meet them. There were 5 delegates, one from each of the major council species. Ho recognized their uniforms and markings. And they looked nervous, which was understandable. They were standing in the heart of a human warship, surrounded by the descendants of people their ancestors had tried to murder. "Admiral Ho," said the lead delegate, unnamed, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "I agreed to nothing," Ho replied. "You came to my ship uninvited, but since you are here you may speak." Swallowed nervously. "The Galactic Council wishes to understand your intentions. You say you seek justice. What does that mean?" Ho looked at each of the delegates in turn. "It means we want the truth, the real truth about why Earth was destroyed, not the lies your council has told for 3,000 years. The historical record is clear," said. "Humans were a threat to galactic peace. The council had no choice but to—" "Lies," Ho interrupted. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "We know the truth. We have known it for 3,000 years. Your ancestors destroyed Earth because they wanted our territory and our resources. They invented stories about human aggression to justify genocide." The delegates shifted uncomfortably. The representative, a young woman named Bin, stepped forward. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I believe you. They have always had doubts about the official story. We would like to help you find the truth." Shot her an angry look. "You speak out of turn." "I speak the truth," Bin replied. "Something this council has avoided for 3,000 years." Ho studied her carefully. They were not among the species that had voted to destroy Earth. In fact, according to human records, they had not even been part of the council at that time. They had nothing to do with the genocide. "Your help is appreciated," Ho said to Bin. Then he turned back to, "But help from a few good people is not enough. The council as a whole must answer for its crimes." "What do you want?" asked. "3 things," Ho said. "First, the complete and public release of all records related to Earth's destruction. No more lies, no more cover-ups. The galaxy will know what really happened." His face went pale. That is not possible. Those records are classified. They are matters of galactic security." "They are evidence of genocide," Ho said, "and they will be released one way or another." "What else?" asked Weekly. "Second, the species responsible for the genocide will pay reparations to humanity. Not money, but resources. Ships, materials, technology. Things we need to rebuild our civilization." "That could be arranged," said slowly. "And the third thing." Ho's eyes grew hard. "The leaders who ordered the genocide, the officers who carried it out, the politicians who voted for it. They are long dead, but their descendants still hold power. They still benefit from the murder of our people. Those families will be removed from power. They will never again hold positions of authority in the council." "That is going too far," protested. "You cannot punish people for the crimes of their ancestors." "We are not punishing them," Ho said. "We are simply ensuring that the families who profited from genocide do not continue to profit. They will not be harmed. They will simply lose their privileges." The delegates looked at each other. This was not what they had expected. They had come prepared to negotiate for their lives, to beg for mercy from angry survivors. Instead, they found demands that were almost reasonable. "I will take your demands to the council," said finally, "but I cannot promise they will agree." "Then I suggest you convince them," Ho said. "Because if they do not agree, we will release the evidence ourselves. Every species in the galaxy will see what the council did. Every citizen will know that their leaders are murderers. And then we will see how long the council survives." The delegates left shortly after, their shuttle carrying them back to the council chambers. Ho watched them go, then turned to find waiting for him. "I have it," she said, holding up a data chip. "Everything. The secret meetings, the fake evidence, the vote, all of it." Ho took the chip carefully. It was small, barely larger than his thumbnail, but it contained the truth that his people had waited 3,000 years to reveal. "Good work," he said. "Now we wait." "And if they refuse our demands?" asked. Ho looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the council was deciding whether to cooperate or resist. They had the power to end this peacefully, to admit their guilt and make amends. But he knew that power made people stubborn. It made them believe they could avoid consequences. "If they refuse," Ho said quietly, "then we will show them that the truth cannot be hidden forever. One way or another, the galaxy will know what they did." Nodded, she had seen the records. She knew the truth, and she knew that the humans would not stop until justice was served. "We have waited 3,000 years," she said. "We can wait a little longer." Ho smiled, but his eyes remained hard. "Yes, but not too much longer. The dead are patient, but the living deserve answers." They stood together on the bridge, watching the stars and waiting for the council's response. The first battle had been won without a single shot fired, but the war for justice was just beginning. The council's response came 3 days later. They refused. Admiral Ho read the message on his screen, his face showing no emotion. The council had rejected all 3 demands. They claimed that the historical records were accurate, that no reparations were owed, and that the current leadership had done nothing wrong. They demanded that humanity withdraw from space immediately or face the combined military might of the entire galaxy. "They are bluffing," said, standing beside him. "They know they cannot defeat us in battle." "Perhaps," Ho replied, "but pride is a powerful thing. They would rather fight and lose than admit they were wrong." He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the still hung in darkness, its power grid still disabled. The people there were surviving on emergency supplies, waiting to see what would happen next. "Send the evidence," Ho ordered. "All of it. To every news station, every planet, every ship in the galaxy. Let everyone see the truth." Within hours, the galaxy changed. The secret files that had stolen from the council archives spread across every communication network. Billions of beings watched in shock as the evidence played out before them. They saw the secret meetings where council leaders planned the destruction of Earth. They heard recordings of politicians laughing about the human problem being solved. They read documents showing that the accusations against humanity had been completely fabricated. And they saw the vote. 9 species had voted to commit genocide. 9 species had decided that an entire civilization deserved to die. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On 100 different planets, citizens took to the streets. They demanded explanations from their governments. They demanded to know why they had been lied to for 3,000 years. Some called for the current leaders to resign. Others called for trials and punishments. The council tried to control the situation. They claimed the evidence was fake, manufactured by human technology. They said the files had been altered, that the recordings were lies. But it was too late. The truth was out, and it could not be taken back. "Admiral," said one, his voice excited, "we are receiving communications from several planetary governments. They want to talk. They want to apologize." Ho turned from the window. "Which governments?" The and the. All 3 species that voted against Earth's destruction. They say they want to help." Ho nodded slowly. He had expected this. The 3 species that had opposed the genocide had nothing to hide. They could afford to stand on the right side of history now that the truth was known. "Accept their communications," Ho said, "but be cautious. We have trusted aliens before, and it cost us our." Over the next week, everything changed. The Galactic Council, which had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, began to fall apart. The species that had voted for Earth's destruction found themselves isolated. Their allies abandoned them. Their trading partners cut ties. Their own citizens demanded change. Finally, the council agreed to humanity's demands. They had no choice. The tribunal was held on a neutral space station, far from any planet. Representatives from all 12 council species were required to attend. So were representatives from humanity. Ho chose his delegation carefully. He brought Commander, who had stolen the evidence. He brought one, who would serve as their communications officer. And he brought Sung, an old man who had devoted his entire life to preparing for this moment. Sung was 93 years old, ancient by human standards. His body was frail and his movements were slow. But his mind was sharp as glass, and his knowledge of human history was unmatched. For 60 years, he had studied the genocide, collecting evidence, interviewing survivors, and preparing the case against the council. "Are you ready?" Ho asked him as they approached the station. Sung smiled, his wrinkled face showing both determination and weariness. "I have been ready for 60 years, Admiral. My grandfather was one of the survivors who escaped Earth. He made me promise that I would live to see justice done. Today, I will keep that promise." The tribunal chamber was large and circular, with seats arranged in rising tiers around a central stage. The council representatives sat on one side, looking uncomfortable and angry. The human delegation sat on the other side, calm and patient. In the center, a panel of neutral judges had been assembled. They came from species that had not been part of the council at the time of the genocide, beings who could examine the evidence without bias. The representative, Bin, had helped arrange this. She sat among the judges now, her face serious and thoughtful. "This tribunal is now in session," announced the head judge, an ancient being from a species called the Vast. He was enormous, nearly 10 feet tall, with skin like blue stone. "We are here to examine the events of 3,000 years ago and determine what justice requires. The human delegation may present their case." Sung rose slowly from his seat. He walked to the center of the chamber, his steps careful but steady. Every eye in the room was on him. 3,000 years ago," he began, his voice clear despite his age, "my ancestors lived on a planet called Earth. It was a beautiful world, covered in blue oceans and green forests. Billions of people lived there, building cities, raising families, dreaming of the future." He paused, letting the words settle. "Then the Galactic Council decided that humans were too dangerous to live. They sent their fleets to our home and burned our cities. They hunted us across the stars and killed everyone they could find. They called it necessary. They called it justice. But it was murder. Cold, calculated murder." Sung pressed a button, and the chamber's screens came alive with images. Cities burning, ships exploding, families running through streets filled with smoke and fire. "These images come from our own archives," Sung said. "The survivors recorded everything they could before they escaped. They wanted future generations to know what was done to us." The images changed. Now the screens showed the documents that had stolen from the council archives. "And these documents come from the council's own records," Sung continued. "They show that the accusations against humanity were false. There was no human aggression. There were no attacks on peaceful species. The council invented these stories to justify genocide." He turned to face the council representatives directly. 9 species voted to destroy Earth. They who led the attack, they who provided the weapons, they who blocked communications so no one could hear our cries for help, and 6 others who raised their hands and said, "Yes, let them die." The representatives shifted in their seats. Some looked angry, some looked ashamed. None would meet Sung's eyes. "I am not here to ask for revenge," Sung said. "The people who made those decisions are long dead. I cannot punish the guilty because the guilty are beyond punishment." He spread his hands. "But I can ask for acknowledgement. I can ask for the truth to be spoken aloud in front of the entire galaxy. I can ask for the lies to end." He looked at each of the council representatives in turn. Tell us the truth, Sung said. Not because we force you to, not because you fear our weapons. Tell us the truth because it is right. Tell us the truth because your ancestors did something terrible, and the only way to move forward is to admit it. For a long moment, no one spoke. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the station's systems. Then slowly, one of the council representatives stood. It was the who had led the earlier delegation to the human fleet. His face was pale and his 4 hands were trembling. The human speaks the truth, said. His voice was barely above a whisper. My ancestors led the destruction of Earth. They lied about the reasons. They murdered billions of innocent people because they wanted territory and resources, and then they celebrated. He took a shaky breath. I have read the records. I have seen what my people did. I cannot defend it. I cannot justify it. I can only say that I am sorry and that they accept responsibility for our role in the genocide. One by one, other representatives stood. The, and others. Each admitted their species' role in the genocide. Each apologized. Some wept. Some could barely speak. But not everyone was willing to accept responsibility. Hai, the most powerful leader, remained seated. His face was twisted with anger. This is a mockery of justice, he spat. We are being forced to apologize for the actions of people who died 3,000 years ago. The current generation bears no guilt for what our ancestors did. Sung turned to face him. No one is asking you to bear guilt. We are asking you to acknowledge the truth. We are asking you to stop telling lies about our people. We are asking you to teach your children what really happened so this can never happen again. And if I refuse, demanded, then you will stand alone, Sung replied. Your own people have already admitted the truth. The evidence is public. The galaxy knows what happened. If you refuse to acknowledge reality, you will only damage yourself. His face flushed with rage. For a moment, Ho thought the old might attack, but then seemed to deflate. His anger drained away, replaced by something that looked almost like despair. Fine, he said bitterly. I acknowledge that my ancestors participated in the destruction of Earth. I acknowledge that the official history was false. Are you satisfied? No, Sung said quietly, but it is a beginning. The tribunal continued for many hours. The judges examined the evidence carefully. They asked questions of both sides. They consulted with experts and historians. And finally, they delivered their verdict. The evidence is clear, the head judge announced. The destruction of Earth was not a defensive action against a dangerous species. It was an act of genocide, motivated by greed and enabled by lies. The Galactic Council bears responsibility for one of the greatest crimes in history. The chamber erupted in murmurs and gasps. This was the first time in galactic history that the Council had been officially condemned. However, the judge continued, we must also acknowledge that 3,000 years have passed. The individuals responsible are dead. We cannot punish the guilty, and we should not punish the innocent descendants. Sung nodded. This was what he had expected. Justice was not about punishment, it was about truth. Therefore, the judge said, we order the following. First, all historical records will be corrected. The truth about Earth's destruction will be taught in schools throughout the galaxy. Second, the Council will pay reparations to humanity, providing resources for the construction of a new human. Third, the families that profited from the genocide will be barred from holding council positions for 3 generations. Opened his mouth to protest, but a sharp look from the other representatives silenced him. The council had no choice but to accept the verdict. Ho watched from his seat, his face calm. Beside him was smiling. One looked like he might cry. An old Sung stood in the center of the chamber, his frail body straight and proud. He had done it. He had kept the promise he made to his grandfather so many years ago. Justice is served, Sung said quietly. Not perfect justice, not complete justice, but enough. He turned to face the human delegation, and for the first time in years, he looked at peace. "We can go home now," he said. "We can finally go home." Ho rose and walked to stand beside the old man. He put a gentle hand on Sung's shoulder. "Not yet," Ho said. "There is still one more thing we must do." Sung looked at him questioningly. "We need to make sure this never happens again," Ho explained. "We need to build something new, something better." The old man nodded slowly. "Yes, you are right. Justice is not just about the past, it is about the future." They left the tribunal chamber together, the human delegation walking tall through crowds of aliens who watched them with mixed emotions. Some looked afraid, some looked ashamed, and some, just some, looked hopeful. The galaxy was changing. The truth had finally been spoken, and humanity, after 3,000 years of hiding, was finally free. The months after the tribunal were difficult for everyone. The galaxy had been forced to confront an uncomfortable truth, and not everyone handled it well. Some species embraced the change. The who had voted against the genocide 3,000 years ago opened their borders to humanity. They offered land, resources, and friendship. The did the same, their representative Bin becoming one of humanity's strongest allies in the new council. But others resisted. The in particular struggled with their new role as the villains of galactic history. Their leaders had been forced to admit guilt, but many ordinary citizens refused to accept it. They said the evidence was fake. They said humanity had tricked the council. They said their ancestors had done nothing wrong. Admiral Ho watched these developments from the bridge of the eternal memory. He had hoped that the tribunal would bring closure, but he was starting to realize that truth alone was not enough. They needed to truly understand what their ancestors had done. They needed to feel it. "There is resistance on the," commander reported. "Protests against the reparation payments. Some groups are calling for war against humanity." Ho sighed. "They have been the masters of the galaxy for so long, they do not know how to be anything else. What should we do?" Ho thought for a long moment. Military force would only make things worse. They would see it as proof that humans were the aggressors, just as their old propaganda had claimed. No, they needed something different, something that would reach the hearts of ordinary citizens. "I want you to go to the," Ho said. "Find their high elder, the spiritual leader of their people." Raised an eyebrow. "The high elder, why?" "Because the high elder is not a politician," Ho explained. "He is a religious figure. They respect him in a way they do not respect their government. If he can be convinced of the truth, his people will listen." "And how am I supposed to convince him?" Ho reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. "With this, these are recordings from Earth's final days, not the news broadcasts or the military communications. These are personal recordings, families saying goodbye to each other, parents telling their children they love them, people facing death with courage and dignity." Took the chip carefully. "You think this will change his mind?" "I think it might. They have always seen humans as monsters. These recordings will show them that we were just people, ordinary people who loved and feared and hoped, just like everyone else." Nodded slowly. "I will do my best, Admiral." She left the next day, taking a small shuttle to the planet's power had been restored weeks ago, but the damage to their pride would take much longer to heal. The High Elder lived in a great temple at the top of the tallest mountain on the planet. It took 2 days to reach it, climbing narrow paths through cold winds and thin air. The guards who met her at the temple gates were hostile, their 4 arms crossed in disapproval. "You are not welcome here, human," the lead guard said. "I have come to speak with the High Elder," replied calmly. "It is important." "The High Elder does not meet with outsiders." "He will want to meet with me. Tell him I have brought something he needs to see." The guards argued among themselves, but eventually one of them went inside. He returned a few minutes later looking surprised. "The High Elder will see you," he said. But only you, your weapons stay here." Handed over her sidearm without complaint, she had not come to fight. The inside of the temple was beautiful, filled with carved stone and glowing crystals. They had a deep appreciation for art and beauty, something that was often forgotten because of their aggressive nature. Walked through halls covered in paintings and sculptures, all depicting scenes from history and religion. The High Elder waited for her in a small chamber at the heart of the temple. He was old, even by standards, with pale blue skin that had faded almost to white and 4 arms that seemed too thin for his body. But his black eyes were sharp and intelligent. "I know who you are," the High Elder said. His voice was soft but clear. "You are the one who stole our records, the one who exposed our shame to the galaxy." "I am," admitted, "but I did not come here to shame you. I came here to help you understand." The High Elder laughed, but it was a tired sound. "Understand what? That my ancestors were murderers. I have seen the evidence. I know what they did." "But do you feel it?" asked. "Do you truly understand what it meant to be human on that day?" The High Elder looked at her with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Held up the data chip. "These are recordings from Earth's final hours, not military communications or news broadcasts. Personal recordings, messages from ordinary people who knew they were about to die." She stepped forward and placed the chip on the table between them. "Watch them. See for yourself who we really were." The High Elder picked up the chip and studied it. For a long moment, he did not speak. Then he inserted it into a viewing device and began to watch. The first recording showed a young woman sitting in a small room. Behind her, through a window, smoke rose from burning buildings. She was holding a small child, a baby barely old enough to walk. "This is for whoever finds this," the woman said. Her voice was steady, but tears ran down her cheeks. "My name is Parkby. This is my daughter. She is 3 months old. She likes to laugh when I sing to her." The woman paused, struggling to control her emotions. "The ships came this morning. They are bombing the city. I do not think we will survive, but I wanted someone to know that we were here, that we loved each other, that we were a family." She looked down at the baby in her arms and smiled through her tears. "I hope you have a good life, little one. I am sorry I will not be there to see it." The recording ended. The High Elder sat in silence, his 4 hands pressed against his face. When he looked up, his black eyes were wet. "There are more?" he asked quietly. "Many more," said. "Hundreds of recordings, thousands, all from people who knew they were going to die and wanted to leave something behind." The High Elder watched recording after recording. A father teaching his son to ride a bicycle, knowing the bombs would fall the next day. A grandmother singing old songs to her, trying to keep them calm as the city burned around them. A young couple getting married in a shelter, surrounded by strangers who had become their family in the last hours of their lives. Each recording showed the same thing. Not monsters, not threats, just people. Ordinary people who loved and feared and hoped, exactly as Ho had said. When the final recording ended, the High Elder was weeping openly. His thin body shook with sobs, and his 4 arms clutched at his robes as if trying to hold himself together. "We did this," he whispered. "My people did this." Nodded, "Yes, you did. How can we ever make amends? How can we ever wash this stain from our souls?" Sat down across from him. "You cannot change the past. What happened 3,000 years ago cannot be undone, but you can change the future." The High Elder looked at her. "How?" "By telling the truth. By making sure your people understand what really happened. By teaching your children that genocide is wrong, no matter who it is done to or why. By building a new relationship with humanity based on honesty and respect." She leaned forward. "My people do not want revenge. We do not want to hurt the. We want justice, and justice has been served. Now we want peace. We want to build a new life among the stars, and we want them to be our partners, not our enemies." The High Elder was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, stronger, more determined. "I will speak to my people," he said. "I will show them these recordings. I will make them understand what we did and why it was wrong." He stood, his thin frame straightening with new purpose. "I cannot speak for all. There are those who will never accept the truth, who will cling to the old lies until they die. But I can speak for many, and I will. Rose as well, that is all we ask." The High Elder walked her to the temple gates personally, something his guards said he had never done for any visitor. As they stood at the entrance, looking out over the mountains, he spoke one last time. "I was taught that humans were monsters, that you were violent and dangerous and deserved to die. But I see now that the real monsters were us. We killed billions of innocent people and then lied about it for 3,000 years." He turned to face directly. "I am sorry. I know that words cannot undo what was done, but I am sorry from the bottom of my heart." Looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised both of them. She reached out and took one of his 4 hands in both of hers. "I forgive you," she said, "not because you deserve it, not because forgiveness is easy, but because holding on to anger would destroy us both. I forgive you, and I hope we can move forward together." The High Elder's eyes filled with tears again. "Thank you, thank you." Released his hand and began to walk down the mountain path. Behind her, the High Elder watched until she disappeared from view. The next week, the High Elder broadcast a message to every world. He showed the recordings from Earth. He spoke about what his people had done. He wept as he apologized to all of humanity, promising that they would change. The response was mixed. Some were angry, refusing to accept what they called human propaganda, but many others were moved. They had never seen humans as real people before. The recordings changed that. Admiral Ho watched the broadcast from the bridge of the eternal memory. Beside him stood quietly, her face thoughtful. "You did well," Ho said, "better than I expected." Shook her head. "I did not do anything. The recordings did the work. I just delivered them." Sometimes delivery is the hardest part. Ho turned to look at the stars. The galaxy was changing. They were beginning to accept their history. The other species were adapting to the new reality, and humanity was slowly being accepted as a legitimate member of galactic civilization. "We have come so far," Ho said quietly. 3,000 years of hiding, of waiting, of preparing, and now it is almost over." "Almost?" asked. Ho smiled. "There is still one thing left to do. We need to build our new home. We need to create a future for our people. The past is important, but the future matters more." He pressed a button on his console. The main screen changed, showing a beautiful planet covered in blue oceans and green forests. It looked almost like Earth. "This is 442b," Ho said. "The planet the Council has given us as reparations. Our scientists say it is perfect for human life. We will call it New Earth." Stared at the screen, her eyes wide. "It is beautiful." "Yes," Ho agreed, "it is, and it is ours." The human fleet began to move, their ships turning toward their new home. After 3,000 years of wandering, humanity was finally going to settle down. They were finally going to build something that would last. And the galaxy would never forget them again. 5 years had passed since humanity returned to the galaxy. 5 years since Admiral Ho had faced the fleet and demanded justice. 5 years since the tribunal had exposed the truth about Earth's destruction. So much had changed. New Earth was no longer just a planet on a screen. It was a real place now, with cities and farms and millions of people calling it home. The first colonists had arrived 3 years ago, stepping out of their ships and breathing fresh air for the first time in generations. Some of them had wept, some had laughed, some had simply stood in silence, unable to believe that the long journey was finally over. Admiral Ho stood on a hill overlooking the capital city. It was called Sunrise City, named because it was built on the eastern coast, where colonists could watch the sun rise over the ocean every morning. The buildings were tall and white, designed to capture as much sunlight as possible. After 3,000 years in the darkness between stars, humans craved light. "It is beautiful," said a voice behind him. Ho turned to see a young woman approaching. She was tall and strong, with short black hair and intelligent eyes. Her name was, and she was the person Ho had chosen to be his successor. "Yes, it is," Ho agreed, "more beautiful than I imagined." Came to stand beside him, looking out at the city below. "The council is sending another delegation. They want to discuss trade agreements." "Let Commander handle it. She is better at diplomacy than I am." Smiled, "She said the same thing about you." Ho laughed. It was something he did more often these days. For most of his life, he had carried the weight of his people's survival on his shoulders. Now that weight was lifting. The mission was nearly complete. "I received a message from Bin," continued. "The Parliament has voted to establish a permanent embassy on New Earth. They want to strengthen the alliance." "Good, they have been true friends. We should welcome them." Nodded, then she turned to face Ho directly. "Admiral, there is something I need to ask you." "Ask." "When are you going to retire?" Ho raised an eyebrow. "Why, are you eager to take my place?" "No, I mean, yes, I am ready to lead if you want me to, but that is not why I am asking." The expression grew serious. "You have given your entire life to this mission. You have sacrificed everything for our people, but the mission is over now. The war is won. Do you not think you deserve some rest?" Ho was silent for a long moment. He thought about his life, about the decades he had spent preparing for humanity's return. He thought about all the things he had missed, the simple pleasures that other people took for granted. He had never married, never had children, never taken a vacation. His entire existence had been dedicated to one goal. And now that goal was achieved. "You are right," he said finally. "I have been thinking about it for some time. The truth is, I do not know how to stop fighting. I have been at war my whole life, even when there was no battle to fight." "Then learn," said gently. "You have earned it." Ho looked at her, and for the first time in many years he felt something like hope for himself. Not hope for humanity, not hope for justice, but simple personal hope. The hope that there might still be good years ahead of him. "Very well," he said. "I will announce my retirement at the anniversary celebration next month. You will take command of the fleet." His eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything. You are ready. You have been ready for years." The anniversary celebration was held exactly 5 years after humanity's return. Representatives from dozens of species came to New Earth to attend. The Cent, a delegation led by the Cent Bin, now one of the most powerful politicians in the galaxy. Even the Cent representatives, though they were quieter and more humble than they had once been. The celebration was held in Sunrise City's Central Plaza, a vast open space surrounded by gardens and fountains. Thousands of humans gathered there, along with hundreds of alien visitors. Music played from speakers set up around the plaza, a mix of traditional human songs and new compositions created on New Earth. Admiral Ho stood on a stage at the center of the plaza, looking out at the crowd. Beside him stood an old Sung, who had lived to see this day despite his advanced age. "My friends," Ho began, his voice amplified across the plaza, "5 years ago we returned to a galaxy that had forgotten us. We came seeking justice and we found it. We came seeking truth and it was revealed. We came seeking a home and now we have one." The crowd cheered. Humans and aliens alike clapped and shouted their approval. "But our journey is not over," Ho continued. "We have a new world to build. We have a future to create. And that future will not be built on revenge or anger. It will be built on hope." He paused, letting his words sink in. "For 3,000 years we remembered what was done to us. We remembered the fire and the death and the betrayal. We held onto our pain and used it to survive, but now it is time to let go. The crowd grew quiet, listening intently. I am not asking you to forget, Ho said. What happened to Earth should never be forgotten. The names of the dead should always be remembered. But I am asking you to forgive, not because our enemies deserve it, but because we deserve peace. We deserve to live without anger eating at our souls. We deserve to be free. He turned to face the alien delegates. And to our new allies and friends I say this: the past cannot be changed. The crimes of your ancestors are not your crimes. What matters now is what we do together, how we build a better future for all our peoples. Of the step forward, the stand with humanity, we always have and we always will. Bin of the spoke next. They are proud to call humans our friends. We look forward to many years of cooperation and partnership. One by one, the other delegates offered their own words of support and friendship. Even the representative, a young woman named Tao, spoke. They acknowledge our responsibility for the past, she said. We are committed to building a better future. We ask for humanity's patience as we learn to be better. The crowd applauded. It was not the same enthusiastic cheering that had greeted the other speeches, but it was acceptance. It was a beginning. Finally, Ho turned to the last announcement. My friends, I have one more thing to tell you. After 50 years of service, I am retiring from the military. A murmur ran through the crowd. Ho raised his hand for silence. I have served humanity all my life. I have done my best to lead us through the darkness and into the light. But now it is time for new leaders to take over, younger people with fresh ideas and hopeful hearts. He turned to and extended his hand. I am proud to announce that Fleet Commander will take my place as the leader of human forces. She is strong, wise, and compassionate. She will lead humanity not toward war, but toward peace. Stepped forward, her eyes bright with emotion. She took Ho's hand and shook it firmly. Thank you, Admiral, she said. I will do my best to honor your legacy. I know you will, Ho replied. I have complete faith in you. The celebration continued late into the night. There was music and dancing and food from 100 different worlds. Humans and aliens mingled together, sharing stories and laughter. Ho slipped away from the crowd as the night grew late. He walked through the gardens surrounding the plaza, enjoying the quiet and the cool night air. After so many years on starships, the simple pleasure of walking on solid ground beneath an open sky still felt like a miracle. He found a bench overlooking a small pond and sat down. The stars reflected on the water's surface, points of light dancing with every ripple. Mind if I join you? Ho looked up to see old Sung approaching. They moved slowly, leaning heavily on a cane, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. Please, Ho said, making room on the bench. Sung sat down with a sigh of relief. These old bones are not what they used to be. You have earned your rest, we all have. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. My grandfather would have been proud, Sung said finally. He dreamed of this day, you know, a human world free and safe under an open sky. He would be proud of you, Ho replied. You kept your promise to him. Sung smiled. And you kept your promise to your ancestors. We all did in the end. Ho thought about the wall of names on the eternal memory, the millions of dead whose memory had driven humanity forward. He thought about Park, his ancestor who had died when Earth was destroyed. I wonder what they would think of us now, Ho said. The ones who died, would they be proud? I think they would, Sung said. We survived, we returned, we got justice, and now we are building something new, something beautiful. What more could they ask? Ho nodded slowly. You are right, I think you are right. They sat together for a long time, two old men watching the stars. Behind them, the sounds of celebration continued, music and laughter, and the voices of a people who had finally found their home. In the morning, the sun would rise over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The first day of a new era would begin, and humanity, after 3,000 years of darkness, would finally step into the light. The galaxy had tried to destroy them. It had burned their world, hunted their survivors, and erased their history. But humans had proven stronger than their enemies imagined. They had survived against impossible odds. They had returned when everyone thought they were gone. They had demanded justice and received it. And now finally they were home. Admiral Ho closed his eyes and breathed deeply. The air smelled of flowers and fresh water and growing things. It smelled like hope. "Welcome home," he whispered to himself, to his ancestors, to all the humans who had waited so long for this moment. "We made it. We are finally home." The stars continued to shine overhead, silent witnesses to humanity's triumph. The story of Earth's destruction would never be forgotten, but it would no longer define humanity's future. They had won, not through violence or hatred, but through determination, patience, and an unbreakable will to survive. And the galaxy would remember them forever.